April 12, 1982. Manhattan, the heart of New York City. A quiet parking garage, the kind of place thousands pass through every night without a second thought. But on this night, one woman's sigh of relief would turn into her last breath. And within minutes, 3 television technicians would lie dead, shot at point-blank range. The killer? A faceless figure lurking in a van. The motive? At first, completely unknown. What began as an ordinary night in Midtown spiraled into one of the most shocking crime stories in New York's history. A story that exposed a $1 million fraud scheme, a ruthless murder plot, and a hired hitman who left a trail of blood behind him.
It was just before 9 p.m. when 37-year-old Margaret Barbera stepped into the parking garage on 50th Street near the CBS studios in Midtown Manhattan. She had just finished her day, walking briskly toward her car. The wind howled through the structure, echoing against the concrete. She fumbled for her keys, ready to head home. But when she slid her key into the driver's side lock, it wouldn't turn. Jammed. Blocked. She tried again. Nothing. Frustrated, Margaret circled to the passenger side. The lock clicked. Finally, relief. A small smile crossed her face as the door gave way. But that moment of relief lasted seconds. From the shadows, a van rolled up beside her. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out, cold, silent. In his hand, a pistol. He raised it and fired at point-blank range. The shots echoed through the garage. Margaret collapsed instantly, blood pooling beneath her. As Margaret lay bleeding, the gunman grabbed her lifeless body, dragging her toward his van.
At that same moment, 3 CBS technicians were leaving work, heading to their cars parked nearby. They noticed the man struggling with Margaret's body, half lifting her toward the back of his van. At first, they thought it might be a rescue attempt, someone helping a woman who had collapsed. They moved closer, offering to help. The gunman's reply was as quick as it was final. He spun around, raised his weapon, and fired. 1 shot, 2, 3. The technicians crumpled to the concrete before they had a chance to scream. No warning, no chance to escape. The parking garage fell silent except for the ringing of gunfire. 4 victims in just minutes. But one man saw it all.
Angelo Lucicero, a CBS employee, had just finished his shift and was heading toward his own car. From a distance, he witnessed the entire attack. Margaret's murder, the technicians gunned down, the killer shoving a body into his van. Terrified, Angelo crouched low, heart pounding, praying the killer wouldn't see him. He stayed hidden in the shadows as the van's doors slammed shut. Then, with a roar of the engine, the vehicle sped out of the garage, tires screeching against the concrete. Angelo didn't move, not until the echoes of the van faded into the city night. He had survived, but he was the only living witness to a slaughter that would soon shock the nation. Within minutes, the parking garage transformed into chaos. Police sirens pierced the night, red and blue lights bouncing off the concrete pillars. Officers stormed the scene, finding a trail of blood and 3 CBS technicians lying motionless beside their cars. The shock spread quickly. These weren't random passers-by. They were employees of one of the most powerful television networks in America. Men known for their professionalism, respected by colleagues, now murdered, execution style. Detectives collected shell casings, .22 caliber rounds. They noted blood smeared across the garage floor, drag marks leading to the place where Margaret had been forced into the van. But there was one critical detail. Angelo Lucicero, the hidden witness, told police he had seen 4 victims, the 3 technicians and the woman dragged into the van. Yet only 3 bodies lay in the garage. The woman, Margaret, was gone. The following morning, April 13th, just after 5:30 a.m., a man walking his dog in Queens stumbled on something strange, a pile of boxes scattered in the street. His dog began tugging violently toward them, barking, refusing to move. Curious, he bent down. From beneath the boxes, a pale human leg protruded, wrapped crudely in a bedsheet, discarded like trash. He recoiled, dialing 911 with trembling hands. Police swarmed the scene, peeling back the boxes. Inside, they found the body of Margaret Barbera. She was 37 years old, a woman who had been shot, dragged into a van, and dumped unceremoniously on a quiet street. But who was Margaret Barbera, and why had she been targeted? Detectives quickly pieced together Margaret's identity. She wasn't a random passerby. She was a bookkeeper for Condor Diamond, a jewelry company in Manhattan's Diamond District. She was well known to police, not as a criminal, but as a frequent visitor, often coming in to ask about her close friend and assistant, Jenny Sochin. She had mysteriously disappeared months earlier. Rumors swirled about their relationship. Some suggested they were more than colleagues, perhaps romantically involved. But now Margaret herself was dead. At the scene of her abduction, investigators recovered her car keys, a broken tooth cleaning tool lodged in her lock, deliberately placed there to jam it. The killer had planned every step, forcing her to enter from the passenger side, exposing her back. Inside her purse, police found documents linking her to Condor Diamond, and that connection would soon unravel a far larger crime. Margaret worked closely with the company's president, Erwin Margolis. On the surface, Margolis was a successful businessman, living lavishly with his wife Madeline. But behind the glitter of diamonds lay a dark scheme. Condor Diamond was engaged in massive financial fraud. Using falsified invoices, Margolis conned a finance company into advancing millions of dollars on fake transactions. Margaret, as bookkeeper, had played a role, preparing false statements that kept the fraud running. Over 2 years, the scheme raked in millions, but by 1982, suspicions grew. The finance company launched an investigation, and Margaret, realizing she had been a pawn in a fraud too big to hide, decided to cooperate with authorities. She possessed documents that could prove everything, documents that could destroy Margolis. And she made one fatal mistake. She told him. Margolis panicked. Margaret's testimony could bring down his empire, his wealth, his freedom. She had to be silenced. Through his attorney, he reached out to a contact in the underworld, a man named Donald Nash. Nash wasn't new to crime. He was a hired gun with ties to organized crime circles. For a price, he could make problems disappear. The price? $8,000, a paltry sum for 5 lives that would soon be taken. The deal was simple. Eliminate Margaret, her assistant Jenny, and retrieve the incriminating documents. Nash accepted. And so began a series of brutal murders, starting with Margaret Barbera in that Manhattan parking garage. Jenny Sochin, Margaret's assistant and close friend, was last seen carrying a blue folder believed to contain the damning documents. Neighbors watched her leave her home, but she never arrived at Margaret's house. She vanished into the night. Days later, police found her abandoned car.
Inside, traces of blood and a single .22 caliber casing. Tests confirmed the blood was hers. Jenny was gone, murdered by the same man who killed Margaret. But unlike Margaret, Jenny's body was never recovered, and the documents, they vanished with her.
The three men were slain about 6:15 Monday evening at a Manhattan rooftop parking garage overlooking the Hudson River. Police said all three had been shot, 2 in the back, apparently after they came upon a fight or possible kidnapping in progress.
With 4 murders in a single night, public pressure on investigators was immense. The CBS killings had become front-page news. Detectives pored over parking garage records, eyewitness testimony, and license plate logs. A breakthrough came when they traced a suspicious van reported in the garage. The vehicle had a long-term parking permit, but its license plate number had been tampered with.
Through a little bit of forensics, you're able to raise the correct license plate number that was written down, then scratched out.
Underneath the fake digits, the real number pointed to one man, Donald Nash. Nash's history was already stained with crime, fraud, forgery, petty scams. But detectives quickly realized this was no small-time crook. Witnesses reported seeing him trailing Margaret weeks before her death, shadowing her in Queens.
This is real good. You're on your way. And you can feel yourself begin to say, okay, we've got that initial break. We're on the right track.
He had been stalking his target. Piece by piece, investigators began to link Nash not only to Margaret's murder, but to a larger conspiracy. And the threads led straight back to her boss, Erwin Margulies. Digging deeper, the FBI discovered Nash's ties to organized crime, particularly the Irish mob. Wiretaps revealed repeated calls between Nash and an attorney named Horace Stryker. Stryker wasn't just any lawyer. He represented Condor Diamond and Erwin Margulies. When investigators confronted Stryker, he cracked. In exchange for immunity, the attorney admitted he had acted as the go-between. Margulies had approached him, desperate to solve his problem. Stryker connected him with Nash, who agreed to carry out the job: kill Margaret, kill Jenny, and retrieve the incriminating documents. Stryker confirmed what detectives already suspected. Nash hadn't acted alone. He was a hired gun, and Margulies had signed the contract. Nash knew he was being watched. He repainted his van, changed routes, tried to stay a step ahead, but his luck ran out in Pennsylvania. While staying overnight at a motel, police noticed his suspicious van in the lot. Running the plates, they confirmed it was stolen. They moved in. Nash attempted to drive off, but soon found himself surrounded by a police barricade. Officers ordered him out at gunpoint. His hands went up, but in one hand was a chicken leg. For a split second, police thought it was a weapon. Nash was lucky they didn't fire. Inside his van, investigators found everything they needed: bloodstains matching Margaret, shell casings from a .22, and personal belongings tying him to the murders. Nash was finally in custody. In court, Nash faced overwhelming evidence. Witnesses placed him at the parking garage. Forensics matched his van to the crime scene. And Stryker's testimony sealed the connection between Nash and Margulies. But Nash himself never talked. Even when threatened with the death penalty, he remained silent, protecting the man who hired him. Ultimately, Nash was convicted of the murders of Margaret Barbera, Jenny Sochin, and the 3 CBS technicians. The judge handed down a staggering sentence: 5 consecutive life terms.
Nash would never see freedom again. The mastermind, however, was still free. Erwin Margulies continued to deny involvement, insisting Margaret and Jenny had orchestrated the fraud behind his back. But investigators weren't finished. They had proof of his financial schemes, fake invoices, embezzled millions. Even without the murder convictions, he faced decades in prison. Margulies was sentenced to 28 years behind bars for fraud. His wife, Madeline, received 3. Yet prosecutors weren't satisfied. They pushed further, uncovering a chilling twist. From prison, Margulies tried to hire another hitman to assassinate a federal prosecutor handling his case. This time, the FBI planted an informant, wired with a microphone. Margulies was caught on tape plotting murder once again. Faced with insurmountable evidence, Margulies was finally sentenced to life in prison. Even behind bars, Nash and Margulies remained bound by silence. Nash never named his employer. Margulies never confessed to ordering the killings. Nash accepted his 5 life sentences, reportedly receiving money for his wife and family in exchange for his silence. Margulies lived only 3 more years in prison before dying of a heart attack. Nash, meanwhile, continued his violent streak behind bars, murdering a fellow inmate with a butcher's knife while assigned to kitchen duty. For him, violence never ended. The CBS murders began as a cover-up, a desperate attempt by a businessman to protect his fortune. But in the end, they exposed something far darker: how greed, corruption, and a single sheet of paper can lead to the deaths of the innocent. Margaret Barbera and Jenny Sochin were silenced for knowing too much. 3 technicians, simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, paid with their lives. 5 murders, 1 vanished body, millions of dollars in fraud, and 2 men, Donald Nash and Erwin Margulies, forever linked by a contract written not in ink, but in blood.
What do you think? Was justice truly served? Or did the silence of Donald Nash keep deeper secrets buried forever?